Very important next part, why it shows up in romantic relationships, or why it shows up most in romantic relationships, and why sometimes does it only show up when we're like a year into the relationship. So, and this is going to start to foreshadow a very important part that we'll get to near the end of this module. Basically, as you grow closer to somebody and you feel safer with them, you feel more comfortable, you start acting in the ways that you normally act when doors are closed and no one's around. You start becoming more, or showing up as more your true self. This is where things start to go AKA wrong. Because, and bringing it back to this idea of it being planted in your childhood, with your caregivers, you were supposed to be able to be your most true self, to be comfortable, secure, safe, supported, for you to feel like you could be anything and anybody. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case in whatever ways. So as you start to remove some of the fear layers as you get closer and more connected to somebody, you also start to get closer and more connected to the version of you were when those wounds were first created. And that's why as you get closer to someone, you become more your true self. You start showing your true colors, which is usually a good thing, like, you know, your weirdo self and everything, which is awesome. But as you do that, you also get closer to the version of you where those wounds were created, and therefore you start getting triggered more easily. You start having more fear. And another way I could put it is you start becoming more vulnerable. And when you start becoming more vulnerable, you're more open to hurt and attack. So fear just increases. And in the same way, another way I could sort of put this is your relationship with your family, whether it be your siblings, your parents, whatever, they were the original relationships in your life. They were how you viewed relationships in general. Seeing your mom and your dad interact, or your dad and dad, your mom and mom, whatever. Seeing the way that your parents interacted with each other, seeing the way your siblings interacted with you, seeing how you interacted with them. It all creates this understanding or belief of how relationships are or should be. So that's another really important part. It's what you did or didn't experience with that original relationship is exactly what you will take into your current day relationships in whatever form that is. And this is a very important thing too, is like, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with your relationship, especially the current day one. It just means that your nervous system, your belief system has learned that whatever you went through back then is how relationships should or shouldn't be. And this is where you get those very common examples of like, there'll be somebody who got no physical affection from their parents. So they just naturally don't give physical affection in their romantic relationships. But then they meet somebody who they feel comfortable doing that with them, and they love it. And most of the time it's because they didn't get that, so they're like fucking craving that inside. So it's your nervous system and your belief system trying to basically protect you or keep you in a space or in a way that feels familiar. We spoke about this in the first part, where it's like, these are the patterns that the nervous system believed it had to learn and keep to get the love and affection from mom and dad or siblings or whatever. Now you can see, at least I hope you're starting to see, that it doesn't work the same way anymore, and that it's actually to your detriment to keep in those patterns. One part that the main part of why I actually brought that up, that connection, is because your romantic relationships, you will feel these fears and panic the most intensely, because these core wounds come from your original relationship in life. So that's why your romantic relationships will trigger you way more than, for example, fear of failure would, or social anxiety, etc., depending on the social anxiety. But romantic relationships, you will feel that stuff so much more, and a lot of people start to become aware of their internal world through the challenges they face in relationships.